Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. I'm Zeenat Musafir. Now, since the onset of the COVID-19 outbreak and even before that, Newsfirst has always highlighted the importance of self-sustenance. Now, the Nagatumu Sri Lanka slogan was the slogan of Newsfirst's endeavour, the endeavour to motivate Sri Lankans to persevere during these challenging times. Now, the consequential effects of COVID-19 has motivated Sri Lankans to support our endeavour and, of course, to address the need of the hour, and that is self-sustenance. Now, before we head on to our bulletin, let's take a look at these visuals. What you witnessed were visuals of a 5-acre paddyland which was being tilled for cultivation. Now, the decision to cultivate in these paddylands was taken by the chief priest of the Sri Malayadeva Arahat Raj Mahavihara in Puhuriya, Pulgahabala, Venerable Nimalava Chandragota Thero. This Thero is also the secretary of the Pulgahabala Sashana Rakshaka Bala Mandalaya. Now, given the current situation of the country, this Thero has taken it upon himself to cultivate in these paddylands. Now, in the past, Sri Lanka was known for many great things, and one of it is its agricultural prowess. Now, these visuals are promising signs of Sri Lanka regaining its once lost glory. And with that, we leave you with the headlines tonight.
Prime Minister says foreign aid donated to Sri Lanka in light of COVID-19 has not been received as of yet. TNA and Prime Minister hold a separate discussion at Vijayarama Mawatha following the meeting at Temple Trees. AG issues letter to the NEC clarifying the legality of accepting nominations on a public holiday. Island-wide shortage of fertilizer reported. PMD elaborates method of restoring normalcy in the country while curfew is in effect.
On to your top story tonight. Attending a special online conference organized by the non-aligned movement, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa spoke about the theme United Against COVID-19.
Sri Lanka remains deeply concerned by the unprecedented consequences arising from this pandemic to all our countries and peoples, including its catastrophic health impact, accompanying humanitarian crises, devastation of economies, and social and psychological tensions, among others. Sri Lanka, therefore, is pleased to endorse the declaration of this summit. Sri Lanka recognizes the timely initiative to establish a NAM task force. Sri Lanka has been successfully containing and controlling the COVID-19 threat. Out of the total PCR test conducted so far, only 3% has been confirmed as infected. The death rate is at a very low level of 0.97%. In this regard, Sri Lanka reiterates its call and joins global appeals for international financial institutions and donors to provide debt relief and greater financial assistance to vulnerable countries. It is important to emphasize that middle-income countries too face critical and diverse economic and social challenges that have been augmented by this pandemic. Therefore, it is important to also focus on their needs at this particular juncture and accord the necessary financial support to avert negative income consequences.
The meeting between Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and former MPs got underway at the Temple Trees this morning.
Parliamentarians representing the dissolved parliament and MPs who represented parliament between 2010 and 2015 were invited for today's meeting. The meeting headed by the Prime Minister commenced at around 10:30 this morning. Director General of Health Services and officials of intelligence units explained the current situation concerning curbing the spread of COVID-19. Subsequently, the Prime Minister and former MPs expressed their views. During the meeting, the Prime Minister said foreign aid donated to Sri Lanka in light of COVID-19 has not been received as of yet.
The
World Bank, which is a leading multilateral authority, has agreed to provide us $127 million under the crisis response scheme. We haven't received it yet. As the finance secretary, I have only signed this agreement. We have received medical supplies as an aid. The health minister knows about it. We convened this meeting with all the former parliamentarians to put forth new proposals and exchange our views regarding them. I wish to especially thank the TNA led by Sambandhan for fulfilling their national responsibility and for coming here to express their views. Several former MPs presented their proposals during the meeting as well. Problems have arisen in the private sector regarding the payment of salaries for employees as companies are currently inactive. While providing loans at a low interest rate of 4%, I believe that if we can print more money and come out of the crisis, then the companies can discover different modes of investment when they resume operations. I would like to request you to pay attention towards the private sector until such time. There are several ministers and former MPs here. I wish to propose that we donate a month's pensions to increase PCR tests. I am ready to donate even a third of my pension earnings for this. Former MPs representing the SLPP, SLFP, Mahajana Eksat Peramuna, Pivituru Hela Urumaya, Ceylon Workers' Congress and the National Freedom Front attended today's meeting. In addition, the President's Media Division said former MPs from the Tamil National Alliance, Ilankai Tamil Arasu Katchi, Elam People's Democratic Party, Democratic Left Front, All Ceylon Muslim Congress, Desha Vimukti People's Party, Sri Lanka Communist Party, Lanka Samasamaja Party, Sri Lanka Mahajana Party and the Democratic People's Front were present as well. Not a single rupee has been received by Sri Lanka as of yet. There is one agreement that has been signed with the World Bank worth $128 million. In addition, various items have been donated to the country, but not a single rupee has been received yet. The Bank of Ceylon and the People's Bank have requested a credit line for now. All of this was done spending the state's funds. The opposition wanted to convene parliament so information could be made available. So this is the best chance. Health authorities cannot come to the parliament, nor can intelligence officials be present in the chamber. What they wanted was to convene the parliament and then create a constitutional crisis. This is not a political program. All the questions that were raised, answers were provided here. If they had come today, they would have solved many issues. I see the decision taken by the United National Party and the Samagi Jana Balawegaya not to take part as a mistake. There is no need to reconvene the former parliament. If that is the case, they should support arrangements for an election. When the former parliament is reconvened, it is they who command the majority. In that case, they will try to make the government dance to their tune. The common man must understand this. Their concern is not the tragedy at hand, but securing power. Former MPs representing the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, United National Party and the JVP did not attend today's meeting. The Samagi Jana Balawegaya and other parties held 2 rounds of discussions with the Prime Minister and other officials. We expressed all our opinions, suggestions and ideas during those talks. We also met with the President. However, no positive outcome was witnessed even after these 3 discussions. There is an issue at hand regarding Parliament. According to our Constitution, the President cannot access state funds after the 30th of April.
While there are clear provisions to convene Parliament, the Prime Minister decides to convene a meeting at the Temple Trees. There is no authority there. We do not have a need to go to the Temple Trees simply to have a meal and return. They do not pay heed to anything we say. As a person who represented the joint opposition, I know how the Rajapaksas conduct themselves. The most apt example is the 52-day fiasco. He was greedy to snatch power and become Prime Minister. The same legal advisors who advised him then are the same people who are conducting his legal affairs now. The meetings held here and there without reconvening Parliament will only prove futile. Those who are afraid to reconvene Parliament are now shamelessly convening meetings at the Temple Trees and also inviting former MPs who represented Parliament since the 70s. If there is a burning desire to obtain advice regarding the future course of action, please reconvene Parliament in keeping with the Constitution. It can be dissolved again after a week. Why can't we debate all of these issues in Parliament? Basil Rajapaksa is evidence. He cannot hold chairmanship in any of those committees. That is why they have shut down the legislature of the country, imposed curfew, and are directing the country the way they want. The Samagi Jana Balavege is not in favor of having meals at the Temple Trees without discussing anything of substance. Meanwhile, the Tamil National Alliance handed over a letter containing a set of proposals to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. The important thing is the participation of the TNA and their leader. The former TNA parliamentarians made good use of this opportunity. The Prime Minister said that he hopes to take these proposals into consideration and implement them in the future. All parties constituting the Tamil National Alliance issued a joint statement clarifying their decision to attend the meeting. In its statement, the TNA noted that the joint letter sent by opposition parties urging to reconvene Parliament has not received a favourable response yet. Accordingly, the TNA said that it had decided to attend the meeting in a bid to convince the government to consider their proposals. The TNA pointed out, convening a meeting at Temple Trees was not an alternative to reconvening Parliament and stressed the need to reconvene Parliament in order to resolve constitutional and legal issues. The statement reiterated that these issues can only be resolved through the Parliament. The TNA, led by R. Sambandhan, met with the Prime Minister following the meeting at Temple Trees. The meeting subsequent to the one held at Temple Trees took place at the Prime Minister's official residence located at Vijayarama Mawatha in Colombo. The TNA said it had convened this meeting to discuss the proposals that they had submitted earlier in the day.
There are
many issues in the country which has not been resolved for a prolonged period of time, especially the drafting of a constitution. There must be an answer to this. We said that we will provide our support to solve these issues. We've also voiced ourselves to provide a long-term solution to all the matters. At this juncture, the operation of the parliament is paramount. Any democratic country cannot run without a parliament. Anyone can understand that an election cannot be held at this time as it will drag the public into a dangerous situation. However, the country cannot be ruled just because there is no way of holding the election and by not convening parliament. We discussed many matters pertaining to the north and east, including the problems faced by daily wage earners. Also in the meeting, it was promised to release the allocated monies for the local government bodies which were previously withheld by the relevant governors to control the present situation.
A discussion has arisen on the validity of the nomination lists as they were accepted on 3 days that have been declared as public holidays. The Attorney General responded to a request made by the National Election Commission seeking a legal opinion in this regard.
Attorney General Dapula Dilivira says the National Elections Commission is required to follow the procedure established by the law to conduct the parliamentary elections 2020. In reply to a letter sent by the chairman of the NEC, the Attorney General said, as nominations have already been accepted by the NEC in respect of the 2020 parliamentary election, and the NEC had taken consequential steps to conduct such an election, the election body is required to follow established procedure. The chairman of the National Elections Commission had sought advice from the Attorney General on whether a legal issue arises due to acceptance of nomination papers on 17th, 18th and 19th of March 2020, as 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th March 2020, which were within the nomination period, had been declared as a special public holiday by 2 Gazette notifications.
Former governor and leader of the National Unity Alliance, Azad Saleh, said National Election Commission and the President must collaborate for the good of all. In a statement, the former governor said, and I quote, "The debate is on now about who is at fault, the Election Commission for working on a day of no work, or public administration for backdating a gazette to enable some to collect special overtime rates," unquote. The statement added that it is irrelevant, and the fact is that a large number of nominations have been accepted that should never have been accepted. The former governor said, and I quote, "If the election is held with those nominations, those with improperly accepted nominations who win potentially would be disqualified by courts," unquote. He said that would be grossly unfair to winning candidates whose nominations were tainted when the EC accepted their nominations on a day when no government work may be done. He added that the Election Commission must come forward with a remedy because it is a grievous fault by the Election Commission not to know when our public holidays are. The former governor concluded the statement saying, "The courts need to step in to resolve the situation. This, I think, is the only way out," unquote.
Curfew imposed in several areas was relaxed today as well. A convoy of vehicles was seen entering the city of Colombo.
The curfew imposed in districts except for Colombo, Kalutara, Gampaha and Puttalam was relaxed from 5 am to 8 pm today. Although the curfew imposed in Colombo was not lifted, our correspondent said a large number of vehicles were seen in the area. Traffic congestion was reported at entry points to Colombo. This was the situation at the Paliogada Bridge this morning. The people were checked at the entry point to Colombo from the high-level road. This was the situation at the checking point along the Gaul Road. Curfew passes and national identity cards were checked in entrance routes to Colombo.
Relief processes such as pensions, senior citizen bonuses and the 5,000 rupee allowance are all currently being implemented. However, officials carrying out their duties pertaining to these processes seem to come across many complications while doing so. Newsfirst has compiled a comprehensive report regarding the matter.
Following yesterday's announcement that pensions will be paid today, a large crowd of senior citizens gathered opposite banks and post offices today in areas where curfews were lifted. However, certain areas had not received the funds to make the pension payments. This was the situation in Polgahavala today. Newsfirst correspondents reported that locals in the Ratnapura area had received their pension allowances. Long queues were witnessed opposite banks. The Finance Ministry said it released a total sum of 24 billion rupees to state banks and institutions for the pension payment for the month of May. In addition, the money will also be used to provide the 5,000 rupee allowance. Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, S.R. Artigala, said the relevant institutions will be able to make the payments from tomorrow for the month of May. Meanwhile, the 5,000 rupee allowance granted to those inconvenienced by COVID-19 will be paid for the month of May as well, as per a directive issued by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Grama Niladhari officers play a main role in implementing relief programs at village levels. The Sri Lanka Grama Niladhari Association said that they would resort to harsh action as their demands had not been met. Some of the development officers have been paid around 17,000 rupees in total for the months of March and April. We are also doing this job, but we never asked for payments. Rectify this situation first. Our second concern is the safety of our officers. Provide personal protective equipment to our officers who are on duty in areas which are under lockdown. Our third demand is to appoint a committee headed by a DIG to investigate instances of political threats and life threats. 4 Grama Niladhari unions, including the Sri Lanka Grama Niladhari Association, have decided to withdraw from the process of distributing the 5,000 rupee relief grant with immediate effect. Meanwhile, the Development Officers Services Union wrote to the Public Administration Ministry complaining that the economic development officers, including development officers, have been neglected when compared to other services. The union warned that they would pull out from additional duties if a solution is not granted to 6 of their problems by the 6th of this month. Agricultural advisors in the country engaged in a trade union action by withdrawing from their services today. They alleged that the Department of Agriculture had made ad hoc appointments by reducing the scope of the job responsibility. They also claimed that the officer in charge of the Gannoru vegetable farm had been transferred in an ad hoc manner. However, the trade union action had been temporarily suspended following talks with the Secretary to the Agriculture Ministry. As a result of the strike, the distribution of seeds through agrarian service centres did not take place today. Meanwhile, the Organisation to Preserve Artefacts, addressing a media briefing today, alleged that the government had refused to grant a service extension for security personnel who are employed on a contract basis under the Central Cultural Fund. The Vessagiriya, Jethavanaya and the Abhayagiri areas in Anuradhapura and the Dalada Maluwa, including the Tivanka Pilimage in Polonnaruwa, are highly unsecure. The only 5 officials from the Department of Archaeology and 7 security officers have been deployed to protect around 1,500 acres of land in Polonnaruwa, which are of historical value. How inconvenient would it be if these 12 officers have to work daily from morning till night? Especially training must be given on protecting archaeological monuments. If ordinary officers are employed for this, then that is a problem. Against this backdrop of several trade union issues, the general public too have been affected at present. Although the government pledged to purchase our produce, no one has stepped foot on our soil. No one has come forward to support us. Relief packages are distributed everywhere, but no one cares about us. What can we do with all of this produce? No one cares about us. The government pledged to purchase our produce, but to date no one has visited us to inquire about our well-being. We are helpless. These farmers are struggling to make ends meet due to the inability to sell their produce. These farmers invested all of their savings and hard work to cultivate these vegetables with the hope of generating an income to feed their families. Farmers in Nuwara, Kudaoya and Samanali areas who cultivate upcountry vegetables such as carrots, beet, leeks and salads are now helpless. These farmers are now compelled to abandon their cultivations as even a healthy produce fails to attract a fair price in the market.
These leeks are stale from the inside, even though they look healthy from the outside. We are helpless. Our produce cannot be sold. We have no income and our debt cannot be repaid. The salad we cultivate cannot be sold. We have ample supplies but no way of reaching out to those who cannot purchase food. We have no money to move on to the next harvest. Everything is going to waste. We have no money to move on to the next harvest.
These farmers urge the government to formulate a streamlined mechanism that would enable the sale of produce to consumers who are unable to purchase food. The north-central city of Habarana is famed for attracting both local and foreign tourists. This town is the epicenter for tourists visiting Sigiriya, the Mineria National Park, the Kaudulla National Park and the village of Hirivadunna. Several people in this area made a living by providing services to the tourists visiting the area. However, jeep drivers, safari jeep drivers, tourist boat operators, drivers and several others have been affected at present. Our main source of income was through elephant safaris. The tourist industry has been affected as a whole. Taking care of an elephant is not an easy task. People involved in the safari industry spend around 150,000 to 200,000 monthly to keep elephants. The keepers have taken the elephants to their homes. We do not have a single elephant in Habarana. Around 950 jeeps are used for the tourism industry. We were badly affected until December last year after the April 21st attacks. Now jeep operators and drivers have been badly affected as the coronavirus has affected tourist arrivals which were returning to normalcy in January. None of us has received any form of income. Around 3,500 to 4,000 people earn a living through jeep safaris. We have around 45 boats. Local or foreign tourists have not visited this place since March. All these industries have been affected. Shouldn't attention be paid towards these people who have toiled hard to generate foreign revenue to the country by attracting tourists? While the people continue to face multiple difficulties amidst the current situation, a number of irregularities have also surfaced. The Sri Lankans residing abroad have been subject to great ill treatment recently. We told the government not to bring our students who are abroad by charging rates that are more than 3 times what the usual rate is. Don't charge these people who sent money back to our country exorbitant rates. Create a program which will bring them down. Now those who want to come to Sri Lanka have to fill an application before coming to Sri Lanka. I have received this application from England. They ask if they prefer to be quarantined in quarantine centres or hotels following their arrival in the country. They have mentioned 2 hotels. One of them is in Vaskadua, which was offered as a quarantine centre. Now to stay in such a hotel, each individual has to pay 7,500 rupees. The other hotel is in Nigambo. Now they will make this a record too. Not 7,500 rupees, they have to give hotels in Colombo for a reasonable rate like 5,000 rupees. If not, the government will make this a business.
අපිට අහන්න තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇප්ලිකේෂන් එකේ හෝටල් දෙකක නම් දාන එකෙන් කරන්නේ මොකද්ද? මේකත් ජාමාරමක් කරගෙන. නිකන් හෝටල් දෙන්නම් කියපුවා 7,500ක් දෙන්න ඕනේ මිනිස්සු. 7,500ක් නෙමෙයි කොළඹ හෝටල් එකක් හිටියගේ රුපියල් 5,000ක් විතර. සාධාරණ ක්‍රමයකට මේ වැඩේ සිද්ධ වෙන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නොවි ආණ්ඩුව එක බිස්නස් එකක් කරගෙන ඉන්න ආණ්ඩුව.
We're crossing over for a short commercial break. Stay tuned for more on the other side.
Does your business belong to one of these marketing communication industries? The Market Research Society of Sri Lanka invites you to join a Marcom initiative to estimate the total value of the industry with the aim of engaging the government. WhatsApp 076 887 0757 to receive the registration link.
In more local news now, the government has permitted agricultural activities to take place during curfew hours. However, it remains unclear as to whether the objectives of this provision can be achieved. This is due to a problem in the mechanism to distribute fertilizer in the country.
The National Fertilizer Secretariat has been tasked with supplying fertilizer for 523,000 acres of paddy fields in keeping with the Yalla harvesting season. This is much higher than the land extent of fields which are used for farming during the Yalla season. Accordingly, the National Fertilizer Secretariat says that the amount of fertilizer allocated this year can be used to cultivate crops on 10,000 additional hectares of land. According to the Fertilizer Office, cultivation activities in the Colombo district had taken place across more than 10,000 hectares of land. Accordingly, the amount of urea fertilizer required for the Yalla harvesting season exceeds 100,000 metric tons. However, the 2 state fertilizer companies and 10 private companies have been able to supply only 70% of the total requirement.
මේ ගස්වලට අවශ්‍ය කරන පොහොර ටික මේ වෙලාවේ යෙදුවේ නැත්නම් මේවේ අස්සන්න නිසි පරිදි අපිට නෙලා ගන්න බැරි වෙනවා.
මේ කාලේ පොහොර නැත්නම් ආයෙ දීලා වැඩකුත් නැහැ. ඉතින් දැන් උවමනා කාලෙත් නැත්නම් වැඩක් නැහැ.
The National Fertilizer Secretariat says that the state and private sector companies are in the possession of fertilizer that is sufficient to cultivate several other crops apart from paddy. However, the distribution process of fertilizer has been hampered due to the coronavirus.
දැනට පවතින විශේෂ තත්ත්වය වී තිබෙන්නේ සමාගම් සතුව තිබෙන පොහොර ඒ දිස්ත්‍රික්කවල අවශ්‍යතාවයට.
There are problems in transporting the fertilizer from these companies to the relevant districts. Workers and drivers are deployed for this from the storage facilities in Wattala. As these companies have to operate in a secure manner, the process should be carried out in an organized way. If one person in a fertilizer company contracts the virus, then we will have to shut down the entire facility. There are 6 companies which have large quantities of fertilizer. If one of them has to close down, the amount of fertilizer that is being provided to farmers now will also reduce.
ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් මේ වෙලාවේ පොහොර තියෙන සමාගම් 6ක් පමණ තිබෙන්නේ. ඒතර ඒ සමාගම් එකක් හරි වැහුවොත් දැනට ලැබෙන පොහොර ප්‍රමාණය ගොවින්ට අඩු වෙනවා.
The government, which has permitted agriculture activities to take place during the curfew, has not been able to maintain a link between farming and the fertilizer distribution process. If farmers are forced to cultivate without fertilizer as stocks are not being released from the storage facility in Hunupitiya, and if the government cannot implement a mechanism to distribute them to the farmers, then that is one of our weaknesses. The government, therefore, should introduce a mechanism to distribute fertilizer among these farmers at least by deploying army officers. Otherwise, this will become a serious issue. Meanwhile, fertilizer is being traded in the black market amidst the shortage of the product. Public health inspectors raided a business facility in Galkiriyama in which fertilizer had been sold at exorbitant prices. Certain fertilizers valued at 1,300 rupees had been sold at 3,000 rupees. The National Fertilizer Secretariat said that it would cancel the permits of sellers who sell fertilizer at high rates.
The COVID-19 pandemic has created a significant impact on small, medium and micro enterprises in Sri Lanka. Although certain policymakers have already identified this impact, certain segments such as unregistered businesses still go unnoticed. With the outbreak of COVID-19 across the globe and in Sri Lanka, the local government, central bank and the finance ministry offered several concessions to businesses, including a debt moratorium and working capital support. However, these concessions will only be granted to businesses that have been registered. According to the Department of Census and Statistics, 42% of the business establishments in Sri Lanka remain unregistered entities. Advocata in a recent survey pointed out, due to the lack of a proper streamlined business registration process, many individuals, specifically sole traders and partnerships, who lack financial resources are reluctant to register their businesses, thus resulting in being deprived of many facilities and concessions granted by the government and other policy institutions.
The economic census conducted by the Department of Census and Statistics estimates that about 45% of microenterprises and 10% of small enterprises are unregistered. These businesses operating in the informal sector will be hit hard by the prevailing economic climate. Even though Sri Lanka is seeing a relaxation of curfew measures, it will be a while before the economy opens fully and returns to a pre-COVID level of activity. Business registration is vitally important in this context, as it is a prerequisite to opening a bank account, being eligible for formal assistance, and even applying for something like a curfew pass during curfew hours.
Director General of Health Services, Specialist Dr. Anil Jasinghe confirmed the 8th death due to COVID-19 in Sri Lanka. The deceased is a 72-year-old woman. The total number of COVID-19 infections in the country rose to 721 today after one person tested positive this evening. Director General of Health Services, Specialist Dr. Anil Jasinghe, during a media briefing held this evening said 13 COVID-19 patients had been identified yesterday. Accordingly, the total active cases in the country currently stands at 519, while total recoveries stand at 194.
1,636 PCR tests were carried out yesterday. 13 individuals tested positive for the virus. PCR tests are conducted at all times within the Valisara Naval Complex, and a majority of the sailors from the Sri Lanka Navy were exposed to the virus at the naval complex. Therefore, the possibility of the virus transmitting to others from the sailors is very low. Around 60 officers had returned to their hometowns, and PCR tests are being carried out in those areas. A batch of 208 Sri Lankans returned from the UK today, and they have been directed to quarantine centres. Another batch of Sri Lankans is due to return to the island tomorrow. 129 people from Beruwala who were moved to quarantine were released from quarantine facilities today following PCR tests. 296 sailors from the Sri Lanka Navy had contracted the virus, and a majority of them are from the Valisara Naval Complex. The President's Media Division issued a clarification on how civilian life can be resumed when the curfew is in effect. Accordingly, services will resume operations from the 11th of May. State and private sector companies in the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara and Puttalam have been asked to resume operations from the 11th of May. Private companies are required to open their facilities at 10 a.m, while the heads of such institutions should ensure that health regulations are followed when operations resume. The curfew in the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara and Puttalam will continue to be in effect until further notice. Meanwhile, the curfew in other districts will be lifted daily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. until the 6th of May. The curfew, which will be imposed at 8 a.m. on the 6th of May, will be in effect until 5 a.m. on the 11th of May. A countrywide curfew will be in effect from the evening on the 6th of May until 5 a.m. on the 11th of May. At least 46,400 curfew violators have been arrested since the curfew was imposed in the country. We introduced a mechanism to leave their houses based on the NIC numbers. We hope to implement this with immediate effect from the 11th of May. The curfew will be in effect while ensuring that essential operations take place as usual.
The We Republic movement has called on the government to unite and make collective decisions with the support of the people in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a letter to the President and the Prime Minister, the movement pointed out that the country is facing challenges such as managing the COVID-19 pandemic, preventing the breakdown of socio-economic constructs, and preventing the destabilization of the country's governance. The We Republic movement stressed that democracy is the method of taking collective decisions, and it is not democratic to take single-handed decisions. Now, according to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, inflows from worker remittances during March this year declined by 14% when compared to March last year. The decline in absolute terms is approximately 11 billion rupees. Now, this decline is slightly lower than the World Bank's prediction on remittances to Sri Lanka declining by 19% this year, driven by the global economic slowdown and declining oil prices. Remittances to South Asia are projected to decline by 22% in 2020, while global remittances are projected to decline sharply by about 20% this year. The projected fall, which would be the sharpest decline in recent history, is largely due to a fall in the wages and employment of migrant workers. According to the International Energy Agency, global energy demand is set to fall 6% in 2020, 7 times greater than the drop in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. According to the International Energy Agency, the COVID-19 pandemic represents the biggest shock to the global energy system in over 70 years. The agency said, and I quote, "It is still too early to determine the longer-term impacts, but the energy industry that emerges from this crisis will be significantly different from the one that came before," unquote. According to the IEA, each month of worldwide lockdown at the levels seen in early April reduces annual global energy demand by about 1.5%. Electricity demand is set to decline by 5% in 2020, the largest drop since the Great Depression in the 1930s. As a result of these trends, global energy-related carbon dioxide emissions are set to fall by almost 8% in 2020, reaching their lowest level since 2010. This would be the largest decrease in emissions ever recorded, nearly 6 times larger than the previous record drop of 400 million tons in 2009 that resulted from the global financial crisis. Police said they have seized suspicious books and documents of a suspect arrested from Kalpitia in connection with the April 21st attacks last year. Issuing a communique, the police media division said that these materials were recovered from a training centre managed by the suspect in Madurankuliya, Mundalama. Police said a detention order will be sought from the Fort Magistrates Court today once the suspect, who was arrested based on the investigations of the Criminal Investigations Department, is produced in court. The body of a fisherman claimed to have gone missing during a boat journey along with 5 other fishermen has been recovered in the waters of the Kalamatia fishing harbour.
A fishing crew of 6, which had left the Kudavella fishing harbour on the 1st of April, had returned to the shores with only 5 members on board. The fishermen had claimed that one of them had gone missing during the journey. The missing fisherman was identified as a resident of Kudavella and a father of 4. Coast Guard officers and the Tangol police have conducted investigations into the incident. Acting Tangol Magistrate Mahinda Serasinghe, following an inspection of the boat, had ordered the 5 fishermen to be remanded until the 13th of this month. This morning, a fisherman who had gone out to sea from the Kalamitia fishing harbour had informed the police of a body that had been floating in the waters. Subsequent investigations confirmed that the body was that of the missing fisherman. Police scene of crime officers conducted an investigation at the place in which the body had been found. This was followed by a magisterial inquest conducted by Angudukoda Palace Magistrate Darshima Premaratna. The body was handed over to the Tangol Judicial Medical Officer for a post-mortem examination.
The number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 has exceeded 3.5 million globally. More than 247,000 people have died, while about 1.1 million people have recovered.
Italy and Spain have registered the lowest daily death toll for weeks as they prepare to ease restrictions. France reported 135 deaths, Spain's 164 were the lowest since mid-March, and Italy's 174 was a 2-month low. In Russia, the virus appears to be advancing with 10,000 new infections, but Russia's mortality rate remains low relative to other countries. Yesterday, it recorded 58 deaths, taking its total to 1,280. The UK reported 315 new deaths and has the third highest number of deaths behind the US and Italy. However, British officials say the outbreak has peaked and the number of new hospital admissions is declining. Singapore's health ministry said it confirmed 573 new cases, taking the city-state's tally to infections of 18,778. Japan's economy minister said the government will seek to extend the country's nationwide state of emergency to the 31st of May later today. The government-issued state of emergency is due to expire on Wednesday, the last day of a week-long national holiday. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said there is enormous evidence that the virus originated in a lab in China. This comment is likely to add tensions with Beijing over the outbreak. However, Germany's health ministry said developing a vaccine for the coronavirus could take years, after US President Donald Trump predicted it could be achieved by the end of 2020. A volunteer paramedic has been honored after succumbing to coronavirus in New York City. 66-year-old Paul Carey had traveled from the western US state of Colorado to join a coronavirus task force with a private medical firm. For 3 weeks, he had helped to transport patients to local hospitals and had signed up for a second 30-day deployment until he began feeling ill. Yesterday, a huge procession, including hundreds of emergency service personnel, escorted his body to Newark Liberty Airport to be flown back to Colorado. Meanwhile, a discussion with US President Donald Trump has warned that as many as 100,000 people could die of coronavirus in the US.
People were thinking in terms of 1.5 million lives lost to 2.2 without the mitigation, and hopefully we're going to come in below that 100,000 lives lost, which is a horrible number. Nevertheless, it's a horrible thing. Could have been stopped. It should have been stopped at the source, but it wasn't. It's a very sad chapter. There was no reason for this. There was no reason for this. It should have been stopped at the source.
Speaking at a 2-hour virtual town hall, President Donald Trump also denied that his administration had acted too slowly. More than 67,000 people have already died with COVID-19 in the US. India has asked migrants seeking to return to their home states to pay their own train fees in a move that has caused outrage in the country. Millions of daily wage earners were stranded with no means of income after India went into a lockdown on the 24th of March to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Thousands fled to their home villages on foot, but many others are still stuck.
Italy, the first country in the world to order a nationwide lockdown, has eased some restrictions. The number of deaths in Italy is at its lowest since the lockdown began 2 months ago. Now, Italy is not the only country that's slowly easing its lockdown restrictions. Many more countries are slowly starting to see light at the end of the tunnel.
In Spain, adults were able to exercise outdoors after the weekend for the first time in 7 weeks. After a 6-week state of emergency, today, Portugal has begun a 3-phase reopening plan. About half of the states in the United States have also begun easing restrictions. In Asia, Thailand has begun easing its lockdown across certain sectors. Some businesses and public parks have been allowed to reopen. In Hong Kong, government workers are returning to work today as the city's lockdown eases. Outdoor facilities, libraries and museums will also reopen. Several states in Australia are also allowing for more outdoor activities and public gatherings, though these rules differ across states. Over in the Middle East, Jordan says it has lifted all restrictions on economic activity, allowing all businesses and industries to resume production. Egypt is allowing hotels to reopen for domestic tourists on conditions they operate at no more than 25% capacity. And in Iran, mosques are reopening in many towns and cities where the risk from the virus is considered to be low.
Innovation Nation is an initiative to encourage Sri Lankans to innovate new inventions to fight the COVID-19 pandemic in the country.
Matter, V-Force, Innovation Nation.
We continue to receive many new innovations for GUM at the V-Force Innovation Nation. We are prepared to present them to an esteemed panel of judges and then to you. This is a unique invention sent to us by Samila Malshan, a student in the 9th grade at the Madirigiriya National School.
GUM Matter, V-Force, Innovation Nation.
The Nagitimu Sri Lanka theme song has gained much popularity among the masses in Sri Lanka and across the globe. Tonight we leave you with yet another rendition of the Nagitimu Sri Lanka theme song. I'm Zeenat Musafir and you can watch Face the Nation program right after the news. Good night and take care.
Sangka badak aterin Nagitimu Sri Lanka Hitamu idiriya mai kawan mahama Nagitimu Sri Lanka Heta idivana navalokaya hamuge Nagitimu Sri Lanka Nagitimu Sri Lanka Api Nagitimu Sri Lanka Sri Lanka Meran bumi urumaya pagai rakagamu Sri Lanka Idiriya gana piya pasitu rakagannata Lanka Duru bibiya sana apa idiriya akibadaka jaya ganwa We must unite and march ahead Arise Sri Lanka's night Nagitimu Sri Lanka Nagitimu Sri Lanka
GUM Matter, Nagitimu Sri Lanka.